Very good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of philosophy, and we're discussing the concluding part of the chapter, the dose from the H.A. Robert. And H.A. Robert has tried his level best to explain what should be and how much should be the dose while prescribing homeopathic medicine. And he has taken many references. He has taken the reference from the Organon, he has taken the reference from chronic diseases, he has taken the reference from Bonning in order to explain, yes, what is how much quantity is needed in order to boost the patient. And that's why he has taken the help of the basic sciences. And last lecture, in the concluding part, we have discussed law of least action. And what is that law of least action, which is defined in the physics? The quantity necessary in order to make any change specifically or make any effect in nature is the least possible. That is the law of least quantity, which is defined in physics. And same law Hahnemann have studied and have applied in homeopathy, and he has defined it with the name of law of minimum dose. He has converted it into the dynamics. And that's why when he has written this law, he has mentioned that the dose should be so minimum so as to arouse the vitality in an individual. So very clearly he has mentioned about the same law, and these two laws, the laws of homeopathy and the laws of basic science, they are goes hand in hand, they are like corollaries, and that's why they are more scientific. They are of universal application. So dose, whenever you are prescribing, should be so minimum so that just it requires stimulation for your vital force to arouse and get it again into the harmony. And that's what the dose should be. So this is what we have learned, and we were on page number 120. Let us start with the first paragraph over there. It can hardly fail to be plain that the same power which establishes the curative relationship between drug and diseases and regulates this law should at the same time and in the same manner determine the quantity and method of this administration. This places it not upon the notion or whim of what strength shall be used, but upon interpretation of the law. So it is not just what I feel, what I speculate. It is not the question of whim and notions. It is the question of judgment on the basis of many things, on the basis of many factors. So when you apply this law in homeopathy, you have to think about many things. You have to think about the age of the person, sex of the person, the mm, for what purpose the disease, for what disease the patient wants to take treatment, whether it is acute disease, whether it is chronic disease, whether what is the state of that disease, what is the pathology over there, how much is the susceptibility of the person, everything which you have to take into consideration. At the same time, which remedy you will going to prescribe. So it depends upon many factors. It is not like that I feel. This is not the why do you feel, that is more important, because it should have a logical reasoning. So without logical thought, it is not possible to come to the right potency or right dose. What he says over there further, let us elucidate this law. Let us get a clear concept of elements of this problem. They are of two classes. Those which belong to the patient. So first thing which belongs to the patient, and those which are associated with the drug. So when you consider the law of minimum dose or law of least action, two things which you have to take into consideration. One part is patient, another part is drug. In the first, that is in the patient, we are dealing with the perverted stimulus of the organs or functions of the body, and natural relationships are disturbed. The susceptibility of these organs to the impressions from the stimuli are exalted, depressed, or extinguished. The susceptibility may be exalted in respect to some influences, even to the point of intolerance, or depressed in other patients, others to the point which we have the feeblest response to impressions, while others are entirely void of response to the all stimuli. So whenever you deal with the patient, you have to deal with his susceptibility. There are two varieties of patients which you can see. First variety of patient are there where susceptibility is so much roused, increased, and because of which they catch the disease. Generally, it happens in acute diseases. Most common is the acute disorders which reflects with high susceptibility, which are the products of high susceptibility. And that's why these people suffers very easily with the acute disorders. So you have to catch all those things. You have to understand those things. And some patients which are the sufferers from chronic long-standing disorders, they are because of medication and because of many things, they suffered a lot for longer time of duration and their susceptibility is depressed. That also you have to take into consideration. So if susceptibility is high, you have to think of high potency with less repetition. If susceptibility is low, you have to think about low potency with repetition till the susceptibility get aroused. So the susceptibility plays very vital role in the selection of the dose. And this is what he is explaining. There are some patients where susceptibility is absolutely depressed, those who are in coma. They are in ICU. You go to see the patient, and when you observe, there is no response. They are not reacting. Even you pinch them, there is no reaction. In such types of patients, susceptibility is absolutely depressed, and then Hahnemann have given one solution for it. What he says? To such patients, you must give a dose of opium to stimulate the vitality, to stimulate its susceptibility, and then patient can be aroused. And why opium itself has that deep coma. So opium acts in both ways. It stimulates the susceptibility, at the same time it stimulates the patient to come out of the stuporous condition. In both ways, it is useful. These are new susceptibilities to impressions from external forces, not found at all or not existing to the same degree in the healthy. The sum of these changes forms a class of facts most important in this investigation and gives the basis of proper understanding of the condition of sick. So it is not just only the symptoms which are important. How this symptom reflects in the patient. See, I will tell you one example, simple example. First patient comes and doctor, he says, Doctor, I'm not feeling well. I'm having a lot of problems, but I'm not feeling well. Second patient comes and he says, Doctor, save me, I'm not feeling well. Do eat something. Here lies the state of the person. Here lies the susceptibility. Here you have to understand. In first person, susceptibility was depressed. He doesn't have that much of strength with which he expresses. But with second patient, the susceptibility is too high. That's why he is reacting in such an exaggerated manner. Here the question of potency comes. Then you have to think in first person, susceptibility is not that much high with which he is expressing his disease. That's why your potency is low. As compared second, it is too high, then your potency should be high. That's what you have to catch. So how the patient presents, you have to judge the susceptibility on the basis of presentation. For our present purpose, it will be necessary to consider only such of the changes as have reference to the impressions from the drugs. In a given case of a disease, the patient is often oversensitive to the smallest quantity of some drug, while there is an equal insensibility to even large quantities of others. We find this often. The answer to this is an illustration of the expression of law of dose. The changes of susceptibility constitute the first class of general elements of the problem. Those of the second belongs to the drug. So first is always related with the susceptibility, it is related with the patient. There are some patients in which they react to certain ingredients in an exaggerated manner and they react very slowly to certain things. So this variation can be possible because human is dynamic. In the dynamics, everything is possible. In the dynamics, you cannot say that, yes, person will react in this specific and only in this way. No, it varies. So various types of reactions are there and you have to catch those. If the person is idiosyncratic, then you should be cautious enough. If he is reacting too violently to a certain normal ingredient, then you must be cautious while repeating the doses in such types of patients. You should not go too high and too repeated doses. You should give one or few doses and wait for the results in such types of patient. And third comes the what medicine you are using. Because it depends upon medicine. Some medicines are inert in nature. Some medicines are very active. For example, if you see a iron piece and if you ingest that iron piece, nothing will happen. There is no question that patient will never have anemia. It's not like that. It is inert. It never produces any change. It has been thrown away as it is. But there is one simple example is of onion. If you start cutting the onion, even though it never, you have not taken a single piece of it, your eye starts watering, your nose starts watering, there is irritation of eyes. It means the drug substance in their crude form is so active, so strong. In such types of drugs, you don't have to prove them in hypotency and you don't have to repeat them in hypotency. Here, the dose which is needed is 30 or 200 is sufficient because in crude form, they are so active. But the question is different when you are prescribing ferrum metallicum. Ferrum in low dose will not going to cause anything, but ferrum in high potency will going to work because it doesn't carry properties in crude form. And such types of patients, the drug should be proved in the high potency and it should be utilized in high potency. So second point is that it also depends what remedy, what drug substance you are using. It never depends only on the susceptibility. And that's why he says these consist of power which belongs to the drugs to produce disturbances in the action of living forces so that they no longer act in harmony, which maintains that sense of well-being, which is health. It is this power so to act that constitutes the drug, and it is with this power so to act upon living organs in special conditions of susceptibility that we have to do in determining dose in a given case of the disease, and also to comprehend as the law which governs the dose in all cases. So, this is the second factor which we have to take into consideration. So it also depends upon the drug substance, what drug you are going to use. So it varies from every drug to drug. So Naxvomika, more sensitive, you don't have to go too high. Even in low potency, it starts working, it starts showing its symptomatology. So what medicine you are choosing for the patient, it depends upon that. And what he further says, after having settled the first question in prescribing, what is the remedy? This question of spatial susceptibility in the organs is just that which decides the next question we must answer. How much of this remedy is required to restore the lost balance of the vital force in particular case? In these two questions lies the whole problem of the cure. So if you are selected, for example, you are damn sure about the remedy because you know it has very specific action on that specific part. Patient comes to you with very severe heavy headache and it is at this specific point and he cannot look down. It is tremendous headache and it is as if head is completely heavy. It has started right from he suffered from coryza and that has suppressed and then it has developed and it settled over there and he comes to you. So the action is very specifically, that patient is presenting very specifically the pain at the glabella. There is a heaviness, there is a congestion, there is a sinusitis, there is a pain which is present in bones, there is a heaviness. Then you have to think about remedy which indicates that symptom is presented with the tip of their finger, that is pinpoint symptom. So remedy is Calibicromica. So you are coming to the remedy on the basis of this totality because you know the site of action of the remedy. So that is also one part which you have to take into consideration. Second part, Kali bichromicum, miasm is syphilitic and acute. Acute syphilitic miasm. The pains penetrating, affecting the bones, again a syphilitic expression. So you have to penetrate that remedy up to the bony level, not superficially. So you have to think about the potency which is high enough to reach to that bony level. Here you will require a Kali bichromicum either in 1 m or 10 m, but not in 30 or 200. If you will give 30 or 200, you will aggravate the patient's condition. So two important things: where exactly you want the action of the remedy, and whether that remedy has that specific action on that specific side. How can we know the degree of special susceptibility to the action of drugs before its administration? Simply by the same process of inquiry that led to the choice of the true remedy. It is that which is like. It is what the drug whose action on healthy human being or healthy living being organism is most like the phenomena of lost balance of vital energy, which we call disease. Then institute this inquiry, how much it is like. These answers determines the quantity of drug required, and this is in the inverse ratio of the similarity. This constitutes the basic law of dose as to the quantity and potency. So there, what he has said is very correct. This is in inverse ratio of similarity. So you had, if you would have chosen remedy which is 100% sure, so you are damn sure the patient requires calibichromicum. You are damn sure it requires action deep enough up to the bony level. Then you are higher the susceptibility, higher the potency, but less the quantity. It is in inverse ratio. Similarity is high, quantity necessary is very low. Quantity necessary is low means you don't have to repeat too much. Quantity low means you will require high potency. Because as you go high potency, quantity is reduced. And that's why he said there is an inverse ratio between the similarity and potency and repetition. This constitutes the basic law of dose as to the quantity and potency. What is like the similarity? The like which cures is the resemblance of the characteristic symptoms of the drug to those of disease. The characteristic symptoms of the disease and drugs are those symptoms that gives to each its individual character. Not all those symptoms held in common and general disease group or the family group of the drug. Again, he has mentioned one more important thing, that totality should match. And what totality? It is the totality of the characteristic symptoms. The definition which Kent has made regarding the totality of symptoms, it is the sum of all characteristic symptoms is called as totality of symptoms. Why Kent says like that? Kent has said like that because unless and until you get the characteristic, you cannot come to the right remedy. So if your totality is too characteristic and you get remedy, it's very specific to that characteristic totality. So symptom similarity is 100% and it is at the characteristic level, then you will require that remedy in minimum quantity. So quantity is inversely proportional to the similarity. So higher the similarity, lower quantity of the medicine is required. It is the similarity of the characteristic symptoms of the drugs to those of disease, and again, how nearly similar it is to number of characteristic symptoms that marks the exact similitude. The greater the number of characteristic symptoms of the disease that are found to correspond to the drugs, less the quantity and higher the potency that can be used. Underline this. People never read this, and people starts with their own fundas. This should not happen. He has mentioned very clearly, similarity is high, potency should be high, very less repetition. Very simple understanding about the potency. There are many queries regarding potency, but it is only because we have not read the philosophy. My suggestion is that every homeopath who wants to do homeopathic practice, first he should read all those three philosophies, understand them, then start the practice. The concept should be very clear in their mind. It is not, it never depends on the materia medica knowledge only. It requires thorough knowledge about the philosophy. And then he further says, the whole relationship of the drugs to disease rests on the susceptibility. The power of drug over disease is solely in its similarity. Without it, it has no power except in a physiological form. And that is never curative. So whenever you are using any remedy, there should be a law of similars and similarity should be there. It is not needed in physiological doses. It is required only in dynamical doses. If in the patient there be wanting a susceptibility to its impressions, this relationship of the patient to the drug does not exist. It rests on the very susceptibility of those elements of the disease which show its specific nature and to those which are characteristic of the drug, and according to the degree of susceptibility, it is in direct ratio to this susceptibility. So if susceptibility is high, the patient's presentation is always good. That patient will going to give you many symptoms, and that symptoms, that totality will guide you regarding the remedy, and you can choose the simillimum very easily if susceptibility is high. If susceptibility is low, then if you don't have the symptoms, then it becomes rather difficult to reach to the totality, and it is rather difficult to reach to the good remedy, perfect remedy. So this is very important. If susceptibility is high, then you will get a proper totality. It is directly proportional to the susceptibility of the patient. And to conclude the chapter, the second last paragraph, what he says, in the sickness, the susceptibility is markedly increased. What he says? In the sickness, the susceptibility is markedly increased as the avenues of disease states are widely opened, so that which could have no effect in health, which will be quickly grasped in the disease. The resemblance of the group of symptoms is marked. Therefore, accordingly, the very smallest possible dose will satisfy the susceptibility and therefore be curative. Here, what Robert says is correct, but I will go little bit further. What he has said is very correct. In sickness, susceptibility is markedly increased. But generally, in acute sickness, the susceptibility is markedly increased. This sentence will be more correct, because if in acute illnesses more commonly, the susceptibility is highly increased. Even in chronic, sometimes it is increased. But there are two possibilities. There are some patients where susceptibility is depressed. There are some patients where susceptibility is low. These are the things which can happen. But generally, in certain patients where susceptibility is high, then your remedy action will be very easily worked over there, and there is no need to repeat so much of remedy in such types of patients. So it varies from individual to individual. In acute illnesses, you don't have to repeat too much. You have to be very cautious and watchful, and you have to check those patients daily, specifically if you are dealing with the fever patient. And to conclude what he says in this chapter, a knowledge of basic principles of this law explains why often a very high potency will cure intractable disease states where the low potencies do not even give the relief. What he says? Knowledge of the basic principles of this law explains why often a very high potency will cure intractable disease states when the low potencies do not even give the relief. Again, the knowledge of this law necessitates a thorough knowledge of our materia medica. Knowledge of this law makes for clear understanding of the homeopathic art. So it is your potency selection never depends upon one factor. There are many factors which you have to take into consideration. The patient's first point is patient. As I have already mentioned, it is the age, it is the sex, it is the disease, it is the susceptibility, it is the pathology of the disease, everything related with the disease from the patient, which you have to take into consideration on one hand. And another point, you must have knowledge of materia medica in thorough, so that you will understand how much how much susceptibility of the drug substance is there. So some drug substances are very active, which you don't have to go for high. Some drug substances are very inert, where you have to go for high. So thorough knowledge of the materia medica is also necessary at the same time when you have to deal with the dose of the patient. So here concludes one more chapter from third year syllabus, that is the dose. We are on I think we have finished maximum chapters in the third year's syllabus. Tomorrow we'll start with the chapter, that is the remedy reaction, chapter number 14, I think so. It is, yes, chapter number 14, remedy reactions, we're going to start with from Robert. So all those things are more practical and useful in day-to-day homeopathic practice. So that's all for today. Today we're going to learn one more important remedy in our practice, that is the Phytolacca decandra from Allen Skinner's. So be there at 8:15 and we'll learn one more important remedy from our Mad Remedy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
Thank you.